The polls are closed. Results are coming in from all across the state of Georgia. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us for our election webcast update tonight. I'm Tom Haynes.
I'm Christine Spiro. Fox 5 has crews across Metro Atlanta monitoring the races that matter most. We're going to check in with Doug Evans at Republican Governor Brian Kemp's watch party, as well as Eric Perry, who's at Democratic challenger Stacey Abrams' event.
But first, let's check in on those numbers so far. We've been watching them there very carefully. Here's it. Look at how things stand right now, with 2% of the precincts reporting Raphael Warnock in the U.S. Senate race, polling so far with 57% of the results to Herschel Walker's 41%. Again, early in the night so far, polling had suggested that these two guys were really neck and neck, just under that 50% threshold.
That's right. Can't quite draw a conclusion yet on who's going to win this race. Let's look at the the race for governor. Those numbers: Stacey Abrams coming in at 53%. Governor Kemp right now at 47%. Again, 3% of the precincts reporting. Too early to know just yet who's going to be winning this race, even though the governor has polled ahead of Stacey Abrams up until this point. We still have a ways to go, as we've been talking about.
Yeah, let's get out to Fox 5's Doug Evans, who joins us now live from out at the Battery. Doug, have you seen the governor there yet tonight, and how are folks feeling where you are?
Well, there's a lot of enthusiasm here. The crowd is certainly filling up this big room here at the Coca-Cola Roxy in the Atlanta Battery tonight. We're told from the Kemp campaign not to expect him in this room until something significant happens in the race, and we are probably a long way away from that right now. Of course, one of the big questions that is on the minds of a lot of people tonight is if Brian Kemp does win for a second time against Stacey Abrams, will she call him? Will she concede? Will she congratulate him? She didn't do any of those things in 2018 in a close and very bitter race between these two candidates. Of course, it's premature to talk about concession speeches right now, but if it's something that's on the minds of people here, and it's something to keep an eye on, and we will keep an eye on it tonight. Brian Kemp voted with his family in Winterville this morning. We're told he then went to the Varsity and had lunch with his daughter Amy. We're told he then had a staff meeting with his campaign workers here, in which he thanked them. That sometimes is done throughout the course of the evening, but we're told that he has already done that this evening and will only make a public appearance again if there's something significant in the race. He's had a quiet day in terms of campaigning, but he did a statewide tour yesterday, something that is kind of old-fashioned, but he says he's an old-fashioned guy when it comes to campaigning. He believes in working hard for the votes and for the voters, and so that is something that he felt obligated to do, is to again go statewide for that fly around and to talk with voters again and work hard for their votes. Of course, the polls have shown him with a comfortable lead for a considerable amount of time, and so there's a great deal of enthusiasm, and even in his words tonight, a great deal of confidence as well. We'll be here with the candidate all night and bring you those results and what's going on here at the Coca-Cola Roxy in the Atlanta Battery tonight. Back to you.
All right, Doug Evans, great perspective from there.
And how many times have we heard the governor say, don't believe the polls, because he just doesn't want to take the moment for granted. He wants to just keep pounding the pavement until the last minute.
The only poll that matters is on election day. That's right. Let's get out to Democratic challenger Stacey Abrams' campaign watch party, hoping this election will be different from 2018.
Fox 5's Eric Perry is live in downtown Atlanta at the Hyatt Regency. How are supporters feeling there tonight, Eric?
Yeah, Christine, Tom, while my colleague Doug Evans was talking, there were cheers happening as results are starting to pour in on the screen. Now, the doors open around 7:30, and the crowd is starting to fill in. I know it's tight up here on this where we are, but if we could just kind of show a little bit of the atmosphere that's up here. We've heard cheers and jarring really from this audience. In the poll that was shown, we saw Stacey Abrams have a slight lead, and of course, all of this is really early, too early to tell, but people are starting to pour in. Now, I talked with Abrams' camp a little earlier today. They tell me she was really on the ground, nothing super fancy or spectacular. She was just talking to everyone, getting that last-minute push out. We did hear from her yesterday. Take a listen to how she tried to rally voters the day before this big election.
We are coming for Georgia. We are coming for the people of Georgia. We are coming to deliver education from cradle all the way to career. We are coming to make sure that our teachers get a salary, not a $5,000 pay raise on layaway.
Yeah, and you've heard some of the things that she's been running on: higher salaries for teachers, stricter gun laws, also wanting to walk back some of the stances on abortion here in the state. Want to bring you back out here live. The energy is electric. A lot of people here are hopeful. Even during that little soundbite, you heard cheers and applause, really, as people are coming together to celebrate. This is really the beginning. We know at some point she'll have words from supporters, but also Democratic leaders across the state here. Bean Wynn is in this same building, and a lot of the Democratic leaders are coming together, including Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. We'll also see Beverly here, who is over the Georgia House Democrats, the leader there. So a lot of excitement here, and it's really just beginning. I have my coffee. The people here have something a little stronger than that, because it is expected to be a long night here. But you can just kind of hear the cheers happening all throughout the night, and of course we'll be here to bring it to you as soon as they become available. At the Hyatt Regency, I'm Eric Perry, Fox 5 News.
It is called a watch party for a reason.
Let's party.
All right, Eric, thanks so much. To check the races more specific to you, open up your camera app on your phone and scan that QR code right where Tom Haynes is on your screen, and you can find more details on election results.
Well, there's so many races to watch, right? Georgia, not the only interesting race, but balance of power hangs in the balance for so many states across the country. We're going to be watching all of them. Of course, we have the results on our website. You can go to the Fox 5 Election Hub, where you can see the most up-to-date results across the states.
All right, joining us now is political analyst Lori Geary.
And Lori, this has been an interesting one to watch. Tell us about, for our viewers and for us, really, who've been watching these numbers come in, the difference between early numbers, in other words, what's being reflected right now, and the end of the night. How do things change as we go on here?
Well, we know that just from tradition, early voters tend to vote more Democrat. So a lot of the early voters that come out are more Democrat. The day of are Republican. We are seeing a lot of the early vote numbers right now. And to our surprise, our pleasant surprise, a lot of them were from Fulton County.
Yeah.
So it was a big dump from Fulton County early on. I think what's really interesting to watch here is the comparison between how Raphael Warnock is performing versus Stacey Abrams. Right now, Raphael Warnock is 35,000 votes ahead of Stacey Abrams. That's very telling. Because
okay, what does that tell you as an analyst?
If you look at the Libertarian in that race, in the Senate race, Chase Oliver's at 1.5%. Shane Hazel in the governor's race is at 0.5%. This is why the Senate race is so much more likely to go into a runoff.
Weren't the polls kind of reflective of what we're seeing tonight? In other words, the spread between Governor Kemp and Herschel Walker is about 4 points. That's what we've seen in the polls.
Yes.
And the same with Raphael Warnock and Stacey Abrams. It was a wider gap.
Right. So far the polls are almost dead on, but you know, it's early, as you guys have said. It's really early. We're watching a lot. I mean, what we're seeing is a lot of the urban votes come in from around the major cities. We'll be waiting on these rural votes, and especially from like Northwest and Northeast Georgia. Those are Republican strongholds for Governor Kemp.
And Stacey Abrams has been lagging behind in the polls, but the number that she's really looking for, or hoping that Governor Kemp does not get, is that 50%.
That's crucial. If he can get 50% plus one, there's no
game
runoff.
over.
Right,
Yeah.
and she's done.
And the Kemp campaign has to be confident. In other words, there are rare occasions when the polls aren't at least in the neighborhood of what's going to kind of happen in the evening.
Well, I think that's why you saw from him, you know, on the campaign trail, we are the only poll that matters. He would say time and time again is today's, because he didn't want to be so far ahead in the polls that people were like, well, I don't need to vote because he's so far ahead that he's got it locked up. So that was the main message from Governor Kemp.
And talk about this split ticket phenomenon is really just
it's real
fascinating to me, because a lot of people are, like we said, potentially voting Governor Kemp back into office, yet voting for a Democrat for Senate.
You know, it's interesting because I have talked to a lot of Democrats who are voting the split ticket, and the one thing that they told me was that during COVID, it was so interesting that, you know, their kids went to school. Their kids participated in sports, but yet they had friends in Virginia, and they had friends in New York, and friends in California, locked down, and they want to reward Governor Kemp for keeping the schools open, for keeping the economy going.
And if the polls hold true tonight in the governor's race, what was Stacey Abrams missing this time around? In other words, last time they were only a percentage or a percentage and a half.
55,000 votes.
Yeah.
55,000 votes.
In the last go-round. This year, the gap is so much wider. Was she in it to win it? Were the issues just not in her favor? What happened?
I think it's just going to be a tough night for Democrats, and I think it's all about timing. And, the timing for the Democrats is not very strong right now because of the economy. And with the economy being the #1 issue and inflation, it's not necessarily what Stacey Abrams is doing or has done or was on the campaign trail. It's just that it was the timing, I think. Although there will be a deep dive and a political surgery about, what would go wrong here if she ends up losing.
Yeah, there were a lot of really hot topics that, unfortunately for Democrats, were really tough to campaign on, with the inflation and all these other issues.
I talked to some folks who actually went to some of her fundraisers, and they said, the fire wasn't there like it was 4 years ago. That it was just kind of, okay, we're back at it again, but where was that fire and the voting rights and voter suppression? It just wasn't there this time around. So there was a difference.
You think she calls the governor this time around, and at the end of the night, if the Kemp campaign pulls this out, and
I think we saw both candidates all three candidates in the race say they'll accept the results. So I think she calls the governor.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see.
All right, so if you're just joining us, welcome to our webcast where we're giving you the latest election results as they're coming in.
Well, let's take a look at some of them as we begin with the Senate race, something we've been talking about here, with 5% of the precincts reporting. And again, many of these here in metropolitan Atlanta. Raphael Warnock so far early in the evening pulling 55% of the vote to Herschel Walker's 43%.
Let's talk about the Georgia Secretary of State's race and give you the latest numbers of, okay, let's go back to the governor's race here. Again, Stacey Abrams ahead right now. 700,000 votes have come in for her. She is at 52% right now, and Governor Kemp is at 47%. Again, 5% of precincts reporting, so super early.
Early in the evening indeed. The lieutenant governor's race, Charlie Bailey, Burt Jones. This one's going to be interesting to watch tonight with 1% of the precincts reporting here. Take a look at the spread so far. Charlie Bailey pulling 57% to Burt Jones 42%.
And here we go to the Secretary of State's race now, where incumbent Brad Raffensperger running for re-election. Right now he is at 47.5% of the vote. To be wins 50%. So again, super early on. We're getting a lot of the votes coming in from the metro Atlanta area. So we'll see as the evening continues and more votes are coming in, how those numbers continue to change. Just a reminder, scan that QR code on the right of your screen. You can check all the races being updated constantly.
This is going to be an interesting night for sure, as these numbers continue to come in, as we analyze the results and exactly what's happening.
It's fascinating just to see how the numbers change. The more urban areas do tend to be more Democratic, the more rural areas, more Republican. So you'll see the numbers flip-flop at some point throughout the night, but that's just the way it is when the votes are counted at a certain time.
Yeah, and so many prognosticators have come out and said this is the way the race is going to wind up. But we've seen so many polls.
And I'm fascinated to see if the polls are going to be correct.
Yeah, if they hold true.
Right, if they hold true to what the actual numbers are tonight.
Well, that is it for now for us. We're going to be back for another update at 9 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us.
Have a good night.